What's up? Thanks for clicking on this video. Twin case you missed it, Rocco Baldelli is not only safe, but he had his 2026 option picked up. That's right. Dan Hayes of The Athletic reported this the other day. A lot of people shocked at this, but I want to point out three things before we get into a deeper conversation here. We don't know exactly when this happened. For some reason, manager transactions like this, when they get their options picked up or whatever, they're not reported on like you would a player. And they kind of takes somebody going and digging like Dan did here and asking about it to find out. Dan seems to think it was sometime after late April that it happened. So a lot of people shocked at the timing of this. Well, it's just the timing of it being reported, of it coming out in the news. They didn't necessarily recently pick up Rocco's option. So keep that in mind. Number two thing to keep in mind is they can still fire him. If they change their mind on Rocco, they're not going to be like, oh, well, we picked up that 2026 option, so, we're stuck with them. No, if they change their mind on Rocco Baldelli, they'll still get rid of him. And I want to point out one more thing before we get going, because I think it'll help you contextualize the conversation I want to have. I did think that they should have fired Rocco Baldelli at the end of last season. So keep that in mind as we get going here. But in case you missed it, the Twins suck all of a sudden again. It's been rough. It has been rough. It's been an up and down season. The slow start followed by the hot streak where they won 13 straight in there. Now they're terrible and especially bad. Well, let's not talk about it. But that's why people are weirded out by the timing of this, because the Twins are playing terrible. They're also not just losing. They look god-awful. They look unprepared. They're not playing fundamental baseball. It's terrible right now. That was all of our expression when we saw that news from Dan Hayes, by the way, Rocco. Definitely surprised that he had his option picked up. I think it's easy to speculate that he must have had a performance review or a one-on-one in the late stages of that 13-game winning streak in which he said, hey, well, how about my option? Let's talk about that now. And, hey, you know what, Rocco, good on you. Good on you if that's how it went. Again, Rocco wouldn't be the manager right now if it were up to me, but there's a group of Rocco haters that I cannot ever get behind. A lot of people who hate Rocco need to realize 99.9 of the same in-game management decisions would be made under a different manager. The exact same stuff Rocco Baldelli's doing. Another manager is going to do the exact same stuff. All these teams are doing almost the exact same thing. It's kind of crazy how little variance there is, little diversity of strategy across the league. Of course, some teams a little bit here or there. A lot of it depends on personnel, though, to be completely honest. You're not going to be a small ball club unless you have a small ball personnel, right? But like my best example right now of what I'm talking about is like, oh, they need somebody old school, let's say. They need pitchers throwing deeper into games. Well, Terry Francona, Bruce Bochy, these are guys who played their playing career was in the 80s. These are guys who started managing in the late 90s. They manage the exact same as everybody else does in 2025. All these teams are doing the same thing. The Twins are right around league average in innings pitched per start, and pitches thrown per start. And it's not like these old school managers. It's not like they're throwing guys deeper into games. It's not like they're managing bullpens any differently. It's not like they're putting out lineups much different. It's not like they're not resting their hitters. Okay? So if you're one of these people who is convinced that Rocco is a bad in-game manager, you are not getting anything different from any other manager in 2025, basically, than what Rocco's giving you. So what does that mean? Why am I pro move on from Rocco? I kind of think he's lost the clubhouse, to be honest. I mentioned that the team is not playing fundamentally. I mentioned that the team doesn't look prepared. There's just a bad vibe, to be completely honest. Is that fair? Are those things fair to try to, comment on and analyze when you're on the outside looking in? Maybe not. Maybe not. And just to be clear, it's not like I have sources in the clubhouse. It's not like I'm in the clubhouse. So I want to be clear, this is complete speculation. But if you watch the team, if you watch the guys, if you've seen, the collapse And then now that they're playing poorly here, something ain't right. There are so many games, sometimes you just run into a hot pitcher and that's that. But there have been so many games that the Twins just look like they don't want to be there. They don't look prepared to be there. Guys who I've seen play good fundamental ball, not playing good fundamental ball, not playing with their heads in the game. I understand I'm sounding like your boomer grandpa right now, but I do think a lot of this stuff can go back to the manager. And, unfortunately for managers, who else do you go back to on that? Yeah, players got to play, sure, but you can't fire your whole roster, especially when half your roster is injured. So half your guys are injured, and then if you got half your guys not playing as well as you'd like, well, you're going to fire those guys, and then you're just going to call up your double-A team? Where are we at there? The kind of blame for this kind of stuff has to go somewhere. I was really frustrated at the end of last year that we didn't really have blame go anywhere. They just sort of shrugged at the collapse. The hitting coaches got all fired. I guess that was a move, so they did something, but that was the bare minimum of what they needed to do. So for this kind of approach to continue of just this team just to be mediocre and also playing below its potential, and just sort of the organizational reaction to that is just a shrug. I mean, come on. I'm not saying having a new manager would have solved everything for this year. I'm not saying firing Rocco now would save the 2025 season. So, I know I'm kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth here. And, it's hard to keep any kind of leadership over a long period of time is going to kind of start to fall on deaf ears. You need a fresh voice sometimes, and manager is an easy button to push. Again, it's a lot easier than changing the whole roster. It's hard to change the roster. You can't change your owner. That'd be my number one pick. If we could change something, would be changing ownership. Front office, sure, I'd be fine with changing up the front office at this point, but that's a little bit more difficult. And I think they have some more excuses in some ways, in that ownership has, handcuffed them. But I'm certainly not falling on my sword for Derek Falvey or Jeremy Zoll right now, that's for sure. And of course, no team plays up to its full potential over 162 games. I get that. But kind of where I'm going with this is saying things look bad now, but we've seen this team look bad and then look like world beaters. So it wouldn't completely shock me if a month from now we're looking at the Twins and they're back in the playoff picture. Not at all. That wouldn't shock me at all. It also wouldn't shock me if they continue to lose, 3/4 of their games or whatever, just because of how much we've seen them play poorly the last year. I just wonder at what point does somebody be held responsible for the team being so inconsistent and underperforming? At some point, somebody has to be held responsible. Somebody's got to be on the hot seat at some point, and it just doesn't feel like that's the case at all. It just feels like they don't care. They just see all this and shrug and go, that's baseball. You can do that a lot in baseball because you got a 162 game season. A lot of crazy stuff happens. I understand a lot of injuries. You've got to take that into account somehow. A lot of teams have lots of injuries. At some point, I don't know. You're asking for your fans not to care. It really feels like that. If you don't care, you're asking for your fans not to care. That's probably a good note to end it on. Thanks for clicking on this video. It was good talking again. We'll talk again soon.